Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today's episode 129. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko, former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur. I'm the co founder of Laborless, which is an immigration tech company that provides H-1B visa compliance, so LCA's public access files, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, which is a digital marketing agency for the immigration mobility industry, and which brings you this show. Super excited for today's episode. Our guest today is Ruby Powers, an immigration attorney based in Texas, who a lot of people in the industry know if you've been to any conferences, especially with regards to practice management, but any immigration attorney conferences. But Ruby is not just an immigration attorney. She's the founder of Powers Law Group, but she's also the founder of a company called Powers Strategy Group, which is really going to be a little bit more of the focus today, which is kind of a consulting company, education company, if you will, for the legal industry to help lawyers just run a better practice. So everything from figuring out what tech is good for your firm to understanding how to build operations correctly, to other practice management best practices. Ruby's been putting out books and videos and speaks a lot, has a podcast, etc., all about this topic. And so I really wanted to bring Ruby in and have this conversation because we talk a lot about tech companies. There's so many tech companies out there, but then sometimes attorneys or others say, all right, I know of all the tech products out there. What do I need for my firm? What's going to help me succeed, et cetera? And Ruby is one of those people that helps folks figure that out. So before we bring Ruby in, I do want to say a quick thank you to the main sponsor of this episode, DocketWise. So for folks in the immigration industry, you probably know DocketWise. If you don't, DocketWise is an all-in-one immigration case management platform. They provide best-in-class immigration forms. That's really kind of their bread and butter. They have customizable questionnaires, industry-leading integrations with all sorts of tools, including my own Laborless, great customer service, just generally a really nice team. The thing that I really like about DocketWise and always appreciate is how much they support this industry through creating content. They have a podcast, they have an ebook, they have articles and a great blog. They support this show, which allows us to tell these stories. So check out DocketWise. Click on the link in the show notes or visit www.docketwise.com. And if you talk to them, tell them that GMI Rocket sent you. Okay, a long introduction, but without further ado, Ruby, thank you so much for being here. Super excited for this conversation, and I'm glad to finally have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Roman. It's always a pleasure, and I feel like it was just a matter of time for this to happen. And I'm looking forward to having you on my podcast as well. I always enjoy, watching what you're up to, and it was fun helping sponsor the improv show in Denver in June. So that was fun too.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we were on a panel together. Your team sponsored the comedy show, so I was, and now you're on this podcast. I'll be on your podcast hopefully soon. So it's great, and I actually think that more people need to know about not you just as an attorney, but you as the leader of Power Strategy Group, because these questions inevitably come up all the time, especially as more technology is popping up. Seemingly every month there's a new kind of AI tool or productivity tool or whatever, and I see this on Facebook groups, I see this in person. Obviously people message me, what do I do, what do I need, what does my firm need? And sometimes I try to answer those questions, but that's not my expertise. I don't run an immigration law firm, and so you're one of those people. So we will get to that. We're going to talk about Power Strategy Group and everything that you've done so far, but as always, I like to kind of bring it back and learn more about the guest and share the guest story. And so I'd love to start kind of in the beginning. Some of our guests have immigrant stories of their own, and they built products because they came here on a visa and had a challenging experience and thought, okay, there's got to be a better way. You were born in the U.S., but you are a sort of a child of two cultures, two countries, right? Your mother is from Mexico, and sort of you grew up kind of going back and forth. Can you talk a little bit? First of all, you speak Spanish, right? I mean, I know your podcast and content. Talk a little bit about that. Growing up in Texas, going across the border, and sort of having a life in both countries. I don't know. What do you remember from those days? Like, what was it like as a child having that experience?
Oh, that brings me back. My mom was born to American missionaries in Mexico, so her first language was Spanish, and she later told me she learned English by watching Captain Kangaroo. So I'm sure inevitably that's affected my vocabulary as well somehow. I don't know. I've never watched it, but um, she met my dad, her husband, in Dallas in college, and he was from some German American dairy farmers. And so they, between being rural and then the Mexican perspective, they eventually, between ping ponging us between Mexico and Missouri, eventually we landed in San Antonio, which I call the virtual border between the U.S. and Mexico. And I actually just drove in right now from San Antonio. I love one of my hometowns, I call it. And so grew up very bicultural and international. And in fact, even when my parents were overwhelmed with the three kids, they sent us to Mexico to live with my grandparents, and we'd run around wild on the ranch and play with scorpions and wild dogs and pigs and random things we would find and play with cactus. And learn the way of the land. And but I have lots of fond memories, even going to Mexico. I think I wrote about this in my book about how I would buy chocolates in the US and then take them down back in like the 80s or 90s and sell them individually. And so it was a combination of taking advantage of the entrepreneurship perspective and international I guess trade or something like that. So supply and demand. And anyway, I have a lot of fond memories and playing Uno with my cousins, and neither one of us spoke each other's language at the time, and now we do. But I think it was a good way to set me up for later my profession, but and also just having so much perspective on how people live, and just the difference between Texas to Mexico as such a huge difference in the way life is. So yeah, that's sort of like a little bit of the beginning of my origin story, I guess you could say.
And so you're on your mother's side, you said missionaries. So how many family members are actually in Mexico? And where they, do you know where their background, like what their background is?
Well, they multiplied. Like we're almost on the fifth generation later this year, from my grandparents moving there in the 1940s, I believe. And then my mom married an American, my aunt married a Venezuelan Spaniard, and my uncle married a Mexican. And then it's like when we have Thanksgiving, it's like a UN situation, because later people married Turks and Brazilians and Mexican. Anyway, it's so we're a lot of us are between DC, San Antonio, Houston, and Saltillo, and near Monterrey in Mexico. So we're and like Brownsville area in Texas. So we're all
Wow.
over. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's cool too that they, even as missionaries kind of stayed there, right? And a lot of your family members have just made Mexico their home, which I love. I mean, I know it's maybe at a very high level, and folks in our industry are much more nuanced, but it's not the narrative that you typically hear, right? Like people who don't know or are not initiated in the immigration conversation, all they see is headlines. They would think, oh, everyone's coming from Mexico to America. Not, of course, it's not always the case, right? And it's nice to just share stories of people who are living and thriving in and enjoying and loving Mexico as a country and a culture. But anyways, from your perspective, so you had this sort of double kind of bicultural background, and it's expanded since then. Obviously, so Spanish was one of your early languages too, I presume, right?
Yeah, because it's sort of a touchy subject. Because we grew up in Missouri, and that was sort of the language of the migrant worker, a farmer. It was awkward. My mom felt awkward teaching it to us at the
Mm.
time in the 80s, and so I learned most of it through living in San Antonio and going to in all the AP. I was doing Spanish 5 AP by the time I graduated high school, and then I later lived in Mexico on college, and Spain, so in grad school. So I had to keep working on it. And I
Yeah.
joke, like, I know random vocabulary words like gunshots and kidnapping, but I in Spanish, but I don't know like common some food vocabulary.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, given the line of work too. That's awesome. So
Unfortunately. Yeah.
So that's fair. But so you continued, that sort of was part of your life from a personal perspective, education wise. I mean, I love to ask the question of were you kind of entrepreneurial when you were younger? But it sounds like you were. I mean, you were buying chocolates in the U.S., bringing them down to to Mexico, etc. Was this something that just came from inside of you? Did you have anybody in your life who was sort of a business owner, where you kind of had these ideas come from them? Yeah, were you kind of more that kind of a kid, or were you just sort of studious and school and let me find a career in the future?
I think I was a little bit of both, but what I observed when like I was doing a lot more writing about business and working on my first book, like my dad's side, they were German dairy farmers. One of my aunts was a lawyer. My dad raised animal, like he was always making money, like recycling cans. I don't know, so a lot of random stuff there. And then on my mom's side, they were working for God and they were, being missionaries. And so they had their own thing going on with the nonprofit and everything. So I came from like two lines of entrepreneurs, and so I think when you observe that, it's I think it's fair game for entrepreneurs to create more entrepreneurs, and
Mm.
so and that's also why I decided to later do the Power Strategy Group as well, was because I didn't and write books and give out materials and education about running a business or running a law firm. It's because I didn't want people to have to reinvent the wheel. There's just so much content. There's so much great wisdom out there. And being a child of an entrepreneur, watching all the late nights and working hard, I just was thinking like, how can we take back our life and have more control of our time? And that's all sort of part of it all. Like I became an entrepreneur because what I saw, but I also wanted to help entrepreneurs be better at what they did.
So, and I think that's really interesting. But then, if we fast forward a little bit, and you finish high school, you attend university, you kind of, it seems, studied a little bit of, like, you got into politics in a sense, right? From an education standpoint, how did you transition from, because I would imagine maybe you get a degree in business, maybe you skip or drop out of college because you found some great business opportunity, but you stayed, you went to college and you studied abroad, right? And you sort of focused at least part of your education on politically leaning majors. What do you like? What was the kind of the shift or the thought process there?
Well, when I read back at some of my high school applications for scholarships or college, I was digging through some papers the other day. I still have them. And I was like, I was really interesting. I was interested in political science. I was interested in human rights, business, international relations and cultures. And and I was like, well, I didn't know it at the time, but I didn't know how to create that. I thought I had to be like the Secretary of State to do that. I was like, that's what I should do. But
Yeah.
then when I realized is like, wait, and that's what I tell a lot of other people I mentor, like, just keep following your interests and your passions, and then you'll eventually figure it out, because it's not always like there's one exact profession. And I don't actually believe that it has to be a profession. It could be multiple pursuits. And like you are like a serial entrepreneur. And so I after high school, I was exchange student to Belgium with Rotary. That opened my eyes, met so many amazing people. Then I went to University of Texas. I was in the business honors program. And as I got my minor in business, I was like, I think I really want to be a poli-sci international relations focus. And so I changed my degree. And in the end, I graduated with a government major with a Spanish minor, because I had to go to Mexico to finish my minor, and then a Spanish business minor. So
Mm.
I was sort of pursuing all of those things, not exactly knowing where it was going to lead me, but just I knew it was going to work out somehow.
So, and then that leads us to a really interesting point in your career, which is, you graduated. Before you went to law school, though, you had this kind of interesting opportunity to work basically in politics, right? In
Right.
government. Can you talk a little bit about that? This idea of like this post 9/11 world, and or 9/11 had just kind of happened, and
Yeah.
this whole concept of the Department of Homeland Security was starting to be created. What role did you play, or like what did you see in the creation of that?
So I was at UT in the International Student Office, and I was during the year of 9/11. I was working on things, the immigration and INS. So that was one of my interests in immigration and international relations. Then I fast forward. I moved to DC, did American University's Washington semester, graduate from UT abroad, remotely or whatever it's called in a way, and then I get a job eventually with the Committee on Homeland Security, and yeah, and I was an executive assistant for the deputy. I forgot what my title was, but basically, I was like a secretary, and I'm sure it's on my resume or LinkedIn somewhere. But it was like I was like a fly on the wall in all these important meetings, and it was right after 9/11, but the creation of Department of Homeland Security happened in March 2003, and all of these different agencies were converging. And so on the committee, we had people from Secret Service, Coast Guard, just like all these different groups. And there was a lot of people on detail, so I got to meet them. I even got to do a Coast Guard trip down somewhere in the Carolinas for the day. It was so cool. There was a lot going on, but I think it inspired me to continue my work in immigration. I didn't think I know I was going to be an immigration attorney at that very moment, but I also was intrigued by working with the government. I had previously interned for a senator before, so I sort of had that prior experience. But it was very eye-opening, especially at that time of change, after 9/11 and the creation of Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. It's actually great to be a fly on the wall in that situation because you're so young, you're so early in your career, and maybe the work you're doing itself wasn't glamorous. Maybe it was, but the context of where you were and who you were around and the things you heard is unbelievable.
Yeah, I'd get like phone calls from really important people and I didn't know who they were. So I was like
Right.
constantly Googling. I was like, somebody from Newsweek, somebody from the, Secretary of something, something, something. I was like, I was trying really. Yeah, it was great. I'm really grateful for that experience. And it gave me a good framework for later when I went to law school and became an attorney. So and I just always have a passion for that experience that I had in DC. It's just every time I go back, just the energy and
Yeah.
the thought leaders, the power, everything that's happening, the impact that happens in that city for the rest of the US and the world. It's huge. So
Yeah. And you, because of that, actually entered law school knowing, I guess, that you wanted to be an immigration lawyer, right? Which is, I can tell you, I was like the founder or founding president of our law student group for immigration law. And people come in and they dabble. Maybe they've heard about it on the news or they're kind of interested, but it's very rare
mhm.
to find someone that says, this is what I want to do. So I think it's really awesome. Obviously, you did it, and you've been very successful. So it's great to have that vision. So you went to school, UNC. What was your thought process there? I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but was the
Yeah.
idea again that you want to start your own practice and you want to have an impact on your own terms, or were you kind of like, okay, here's what I want to do. Now I can go to get a job and finally work in a quote unquote career doing the things I want to do, or at least at the convergence of my interests.
Well, I think one key point from going from DC is before I go to law school is I lived about a year in Spain as a Rotary ambassadorial scholar, and I was studying international relations and politics, and lived a little bit in Turkey and traveled around a lot of Europe. And so that was my second year living in Europe and meeting people from all over. Hitting the ground in law school and in North Carolina, I knew I wanted to do immigration. I think I knew I wanted to have my own firm, but I don't know how clear I was at that very moment. Immigration was just very overwhelming, a lot of change and a lot of things happening. So, learning how to become a lawyer, trying to pass grad law school, passing the bar. I mean, that was a lot. I don't think I truly had like I'm going to start my law from the day I get my
Right.
license. But I was also learning a new state. Like my husband had got into Duke Business School, so I I was there because he got into that school and I got into my school, and it was a good place we could both be in grad school at the same time for our respective careers. So there's a lot of learning curves, but as I got through it, I was at the ALA conference both summers of my being in law school, and volunteered as a law student. So I highly suggest that to anyone who wants to do that. And then I was latching on to whoever could be my mentor and interning and getting experience as much as possible in law school. And so as soon as I graduated, it was in '08 during the Great Recession, and then I had two grown-up attorney jobs in 2009, but it got laid off twice that year. And the very second day after the second layoff, I started my own law firm. And while I was in line, I was getting the DBA, and when I was in line, I got one of my first clients talking to a guy who was renewing his DBA after 10 years, and so I was like, this is a good sign. I'm rainmaking.
You got a client in the office while you were waiting to get your DBA document? Wow.
Yeah. We were just talking.
And you said, hey, I'm starting an immigration. That's amazing.
Yeah. It was a good omen. Yeah.
and what was your I mean, had you done any, I guess you'd done cases at the firms you were at, so you had some experience, but were you specializing in anything, or do you have a name, or were you kind of, said, yeah, I'm starting my firm, I'm a lawyer, and he said, sure, I need your help?
I guess I did a good job convincing him in some way, but yeah, the two jobs I had before starting my own firm were as a lawyer. One was a very more high volume, more very heavily Spanish speaking and immigration court, and so that gave me a huge perspective, very in person perspective. And the second one was very remote. Even back in 2008, that was a big deal. We never saw the clients. We did everything remotely. And it was very heavily focused on I-601 waivers and consular processing. So I got the best of both worlds because they were so different in the spectrums. And I previously had interned at employment-based law firms. So I had and volunteered at nonprofits. So I had exposure to that humanitarian employment. But when I started my firm, my DBA was Law Office of Ruby Lichty Powers, which was the longest name ever. And I was so I later changed it to Powers Law Group later down the road. And I later changed my entity. So, but I guess I was, I convinced him to hire me just in the line. So
I love that. That's such a great story. I mean, that's that's out of a movie, and definitely a sign of great things to come. So you started your firm. And what year was this, by the way, when you started your practice? 2009?
November 2009.
2009. Wow. So really, I mean, pretty shortly after you graduated law school, which in hindsight, I think about the fact that, now I run a couple of businesses, and, people say, oh, you're an entrepreneur, this and that. It didn't even cross my mind to start a law practice after I graduated, and I practiced for just under 2 years. I could have definitely started something. I brought business into my firm before I even got my bar license. That was my fun story, so I was able to do the business development, but I just that thought never crossed my mind. And I'm always so inspired and impressed by people who do that. Cause the question I always have, maybe rhetorically, is just how did you have the confidence in that moment to do that versus just put your head down and keep looking for jobs,
Yeah, I think that seeing other, I'd be interested in your backstory in terms of being an entrepreneur, but I think for me, what I've seen out there is that when people see their family members or a loved one or a mentor be an entrepreneur, and you're wait, I could do that, and it doesn't seem so far removed, and then you have a certain amount of skills and drive, it's a good combination you need to have, but then it's you try it out. And I think in a lot of the business books I've been reading over the years, I feel like we do a disservice to the community to say just go get a good grades to get into good school to get a good job, and then life is set. Because I'm more of well, you should have multiple revenue streams. You should be like have options, and you should be able to do what you want to do. But not everybody can, and so I know that. But I do talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, so that's sort of how I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And this idea of just trying, right? And also, if you feel that you don't have all the skills or the knowledge, partner with somebody, or
Yeah.
work under somebody, start your own practice, but then have a much more senior attorney as a sounding board, or maybe even a co-counsel if they're open to it, right? So there are definitely ways to do it. And I think now there's more information out there. I graduated in 2013. The business books were there, but this wasn't very in your face. I mean, entrepreneurship, quote unquote, has become way more popularized, with the tech boom. So yeah, but that's I love that. And to your point, seeing folks in your family, I don't have any business owners in my immediate family, so everyone was sort of like working full-time job, etc. So I think that's where my mind was, and I'm so happy that I didn't stay that way, and I kind of took a chance. I definitely credit, to your point, the books and the content creators and all those people out there that just pushing and pushing and pushing, saying try something, try something, try something. Where one day I was like, you know what, screw it, it's now or never. Let's try it.
Yeah, taking that leap of faith is so important, and that makes all the difference.
Yeah, and by the way, it's a beautiful thing about America. It is easier to do that here than any other country in the world. And I'll always say this: it's not a perfect country, but like that opportunity is uniquely American, and I think people still want to come here, no matter the challenges, no matter the administrations and all that stuff. People are still in line to come here because of what the opportunities that America can afford. So I think it behooves immigrants to consider starting jobs, or at least, as you said, secondary streams of income, because I mean, heck, that's the beauty of this country. Okay, so you started your law practice. You're growing your law practice, and things are sort of going well, right? Were you, and I want to ask this question because I suspect eventually it'll lead to the creation of Power Strategy Group, but were you sort of naturally just giving advice to other lawyers, or kind of creating things to share with them to help them? Like, is that sort of part of who you are, that you saw what was working well for you and you just gave it away to others in the beginning?
Yeah, I think short answer is yes. I had to hustle so much because I was like trying to figure out how to have a firm. I read Jay Foonberg's book from ABA about starting a law firm, and then I was talking to anybody who would talk to me. Like, how'd you do this, and what'd you do on marketing, and which one did you try, and can you give me a sample of your contract? And then I was also trying to learn the law because I had only been practicing a year, but I also had interned so much and studied and focused on it in prior. But then I got involved with the American Immigration Lawyers Association, AILA, and one of the committees I got on, I latched on to Reed Trouts, who's been my mentor for a really long time now. And when I was running my law firm from Dubai, I think that's around the time when we really connected. He gave me some really good advice on like how the heck am I going to do this, and so then I got on the law practice management committee with AILA, and for those 4 years I was churning out content to help other AILA members, and so that was like sort of my natural state of to help and give advice, and people would ask me. But then after I created all that content, that's what later led to me writing my first book. But it was just sort of that ecosystem of like being around other people who thought in the law practice management space, and then creating content and sharing it, and webinars and CLEs. And so that's sort of like one really critical point that led to me later starting Power Strategy Group.
Do you recommend other attorneys, especially who want to maybe launch a practice or grow their practice, kind of get involved with things like AILA, whether it's with AILA or American Bar Association or something, but kind of get involved with these member orgs and volunteering committees and do that kind of thing?
I mean, I'm probably like a super volunteer, so I probably like I don't know. I probably don't do as much as I do. I would say you have to find a balance. Like you have to also make sure like you have a team to support you. So if you're a
Right.
true solo, you need to really be strategic with your time as to which activity. But yes, I think the member orgs, those things are great in many ways. One, it gets your name out. Two, you build connections. You don't reinvent the wheel. You learn what's going in other industries and other fields. You let's see I don't know if I think I already said that it helps get your name out there, so it's like you're giving back, but your people know about you. Like some of the things I've been on gets me a speaking gig somewhere that gives me another gig. It's if I were to map out all the opportunities, and that's the excitement and the question mark of being an entrepreneur. You never know
Right.
when your next case is gonna or your client's gonna come from, and is it worth you doing all those things. But I definitely am a strong proponent of volunteering. And if you're a true solo, be really aware of your time. There's as an immigration attorney, yeah, AILA. There's also the American Bar Association has a law practice division, but all these different local bars, all those different
Right.
organizations. Yeah.
Yeah. Federal Bar Association has an immigration
Yeah.
section. The
Yeah.
International Bar Association has an immigration section. So yeah, there's so many different ways for immigration lawyers to join.
and
And
and work with other bars. Like I was just speaking at the state bar's advanced family law conference this week, and like I was fascinated. I actually hung around for a day and just like soaked it in, even though that wasn't my practice area after I spoke. But just it helps you make you a better lawyer, practitioner, or professional.
And you know what? You build connections, and one of your clients says, "Hey, I have a family law issue." If you can provide them with a trusted contact, that makes you a better, you know, partner for them, better kind of advocate for them. Not even if you're not handling the case. Um, so yeah, good point. I mean, the hustle, it definitely requires that, and the networking and sort of the mentorships, and so all of those things combined lead to eventual success. Now, it sounds like you were creating all of this content, and you eventually it led to you. This is again before you even started the business around this, but you had already created a lot of written content, and that led you to writing a book. Now, is that the Power Up Your Practice book, or was that a book through the ABA that you wrote previously?
I actually haven't written a book with the ABA, but
Okay.
I was on their publishing board in the past. No, the first book I wrote was Build and Manage Your Successful Immigration Law Practice Without Losing Your Mind. Again, another long title. So, but I published that in 2019 with AILA. Published it. I worked with them, and I was focusing predominantly on the immigration profession, immigration bar. And I later, when I became a adjunct professor on law practice management, I used it as my textbook. And I like the more I was thinking about it and I got involved with the ABA law practice division, I realized, if you were to take the words immigration out of this book, this could be used by any lawyer. And if you really wanted to, if you really could repurpose a lot of this for professional service
Right.
industry. And so then that's what, like, I know we're getting there, but like the pandemic happened, life changed, there's a lot more virtual assistants, a lot of changes in the way we practice. And that's when I later decided to write a second. It's a completely different book, but it's based on like a lot of the concepts I wrote in the first one in terms of like operations and strategy. But the new one, Power Up Your Practice, has 25 chapters. I have like 2 on marketing, including digital marketing. Buying a building, because I had since bought a building for my office from the first book to the second. Talked more about the like side hustles, serial entrepreneurship, partnership track. And so I really expanded on a lot more topics in under law practice management and technology updates too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So and this is a perfect place because I want to dive into what Power Up Your Practice, how you went from that second book into building a business. I do want to take a quick pause just to say thank you to the second sponsor of this episode, which is CaseBlink. So CaseBlink is actually an AI powered platform that's transforming immigration practice. It was built by an immigration attorney, technologist, and an AI scientist together, and they started with writing heavy cases like EB2NIWs, EB1s, O1s, etc., helping folks read documents and organize them, assemble them, and then write really extensive, letters of support or other drafts. But they've actually since launched something called Studio, which helps lawyers have a voice that's closer to what they want. So there's more customization. And most recently, they actually released AI-powered forms and workflows to support not just these employment-based systems, but or employment-based cases, but also family-based and humanitarian cases too. So they're kind of moving into a more of a practice management platform with AI at their core. So for those who are listening, if you're at an immigration law firm, or honestly, if you're in-house and you do some of these things yourselves, or at least just work alongside immigration law firms, check out CaseBlink. There's a link in the show notes, or go to www.caseblink.com. And if you talk to them, let them know that the GMI Rocket show sent you there. So yeah, thank you to CaseBlink. So, and I think it's a good segue, Ruby, because there are, like CaseBlink, and of course DocketWise, but so many other companies are popping up nowadays that do a variety of things. Some of them are forms, some of them are case management, others are AI drafting, others are, email automation. There's so many different tools. And that is part of what you do with the Power Strategy Group. How did you turn that book, Power Up Your Practice, your second book? How did you turn that into a business?
Well, after writing my first book, I realized, no offense, but not everybody reads to learn. And so to the world, I'm no offense to the world. And so it was like, how can I mean, that's why you have courses. That's why you have podcasts. That's why you have, all these different ways to educate and get information across. And sometimes you have to hear something 5 or 6 times, and then eureka! It's like, but somebody else told you like 10 years ago. But this last time that works, right? So I was thinking like, what happened is during the pandemic, there was just so much uncertainty and need. I created these like sort of like a pop-up retreats that were Zoom only for 2 days. And I went through my content in my book. And then that's when I was like, wait, we need to be doing webinars, like people and roundtables, and people can get online, and we can build that community and talk with each other. And so I did that as well during the pandemic, like monthly. And then I was like, well, I know podcasts are cool. Maybe I should do that, and that could be a good way to like get more information out there. And honestly, I'm so glad I did. So what I did was I started the podcast Power Up Your Practice in December 2023. We're right now like up to 75 or so episodes, so not as many as you so far, but we're getting them out every week, and it's a lot of work. But and then my book Power Up Your Practice came out in September 2024, because I wanted it to sort of all work in that ecosystem of being a resource, having the podcast. And so we're building out a school community, and we've got courses coming out shortly that people can do, asynchronistically. And then the vision is later masterminds and actual in-person retreats. It's just that I sort of like have this whole framework that I'm building up, and it takes time to do a good job. And so that's the vision, and that's what we're doing. But at this moment, we have the monthly webinars, we have the podcast, we have Power Up Your Practice, the book, available on Amazon, and also through the ALA distribution as a publication. And we have courses coming out very shortly, and the one-on-one consulting right now. So I incorporated it in, I think, December 2020. After I'd been doing some retreats and stuff, I was like, wait, this is actually not just a hobby or like a community service. I should turn this into an actual business. And that's when it started hitting me, like people learn differently, and people take in information. And also, like, through your law practice management journey, if you're a solo or a law firm owner or managing attorney, like, it's sort of, I liken it to like being a parent with a child. People, you don't know what you don't know, and you might not even care to know that thing until you get to that stage. And so sometimes when I'm talking to someone, I'm telling them something, and then they go off, they listen to the podcast, they read the book, and then they come back and like, okay, now I get what you're talking about, and I've done this X, Y, and Z. Okay, what do I do now? And so level up like a video game to go to the next level. And so that's what I love about all of this. And I constantly, because I've been working for the same law firm since 2009. So what is that, 16 years? So how do I know what's going on out there? My podcasts, all the reading and the writing and all the conferences I go to. So I feel like that helps me stay very present with what's going on. And I can share that information with my students, my consultees, and anyone who listens to me.
So who should, I mean, that's all amazing. And I definitely totally agree with this idea that people learn differently. I'm doing a tennis retreat this year, and immigration. I mean, really it's people playing tennis together, but it's all immigration folks coming together, and there's going to be a couple sessions. And the idea there as well was, maybe people want to be together where 80% of the time it's unrelated to learning. And then 20% of the time they're so open and ready, and they will actually, hopefully, they will be more open to actually having that information stay with them for the 20%, because you go to conferences, it's a lot, and so by the end of it, you're sitting, you're checking your email, you're chatting. I mean, you're getting your CLEs, you're getting little tidbits of information, but the brain can't handle that much new information a day. So I love what you're saying about different people learn via different modalities and media. Okay, so then my question is, you have all these things, but what are people, and maybe this is the fundamental question, who should look into something like Power Strategy Group? Like, what are you helping people with? And I feel like it'd be good for us to dive into some of these topics, because, we can talk through some of these aspects of practice, but what are some of the things that people typically, kind of come to you with that they're struggling with or just want some guidance on?
So for Power Strategy Group, which, Power Up Your Practice is like a sub brand, and the podcast and book are underneath. The ideal client would be a law firm owner, a small business owner, would be like a managing attorney, right-hand associate. It could even be the law firm administrator. And they're wondering, like, how can we make the firm more efficient? So evaluating the tech stack, evaluating the standard operating procedures, looking at evaluating the marketing. And so really it's been on the one-on-one component, it's been a lot of the consulting and coaching, usually to the owner for the most part. And but there's a lot of value to all the other audiences, and that's who our target audience as well with the Power Up Your Practice podcast. It's not just for like the law firm owner, but the whole team. And when I'm organizing a lot of law practice management conferences, a lot of times people are like, well, can I bring my team? And like, yes, of course, like, because they're going to see it from a different perspective, and they're going to latch on to something else that maybe the owner isn't. And so I put on retreats for law firms. I do one-on-one consulting and evaluation of giving advice for different AI tools and tech stack. And right now we're still, building out the entire like suite of services. But for the most part, if someone is like, I keep having this problem, or talking about staffing as well, HR, culture, staffing, and pretty much everything that's in the book, from how do I build a partnership track to how do I establish the KPIs? So we do that in the consulting, and we have a lot of material out there between articles, podcasts, and I'm basically turning the entire book into a set of courses as we go, and building out that community. So just like that, the way we learn is through different ways, but being able to communicate with others who are going through the same thing and being able to share ideas is so valuable.
And of course, I mean, this would all depend on the client's goals. So for example, you mentioned, how do I create a partnership track? That's relevant for maybe a solo, or not a solo, but like a one founder, maybe two founders, and their firm is scaling, and they want to keep the firm, on that path, but they realize they have to create a new incentive structure for their staff. They're going to have to hire. They're going to have to promote their existing attorneys, their senior associates, and now they suddenly have to think about this sort of partnership thing. But that's different from a solo or a small firm that says, "Oh, I have this great niche. I have a wonderful, business, but I'm working too much. I think there's better ways for me to be efficient with my time. What tools can I use to, cut out some of the administrative work or whatever, or what sort of staff augmentation practices?" So those are two different scenarios, right? A growing firm with partnerships, et cetera, versus a maybe even also growing, but a solo practice that doesn't want to necessarily increase headcount. Both of those folks can come to you, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, of course. And I think another key point is it doesn't have to be someone who just started their practice. It could be, and I want to get that across with the book as well. Like the book is for people and the podcast and everything for someone who's a managing attorney, right-hand associate, a law firm owner, someone who's considering having their own firm. You can get you'll get value regardless of where you are in your journey or what role you have, because we talk a lot about professional development, side hustle, buying a building, partnership track, standard operating procedures. And in fact, like the way I wrote the book was the first third is really about theory, a lot of business practices and concepts summarized from a lot of books I've read and things I've seen work. And then the second part was very practical, from operations, marketing, HR, time management, things like that. And then the third is more aspirational, partnership track, closing and selling a firm, buying a building, and maybe other synergistic business opportunities that would go along with having a practice. And so you can, I give permission to people not to have to read it from cover to cover. You can hop around. I give you permission. Okay.
I was going to say it's 700 plus pages, right?
Yeah. But the font's a good font. Like you can probably read it maybe without glasses. So I figured my audience was getting to that stage. I think my eyes got worse as I was writing the book. So it was, but anyway. But yeah, the consulting can help a firm, a true solo, managing attorney or administrative staff that are trying to troubleshoot things. And like even a lot of times, like you're asking, like what's a typical thing that I would talk about? A lot of times we get down to basics like time management or staff management, or some things. Like there could be such a big bottleneck about like something they're doing with their tech stack that when I do a consult, I do like an intake like I would with an immigration consultation, and basically like what are the three things you want to talk about, or what are your bottlenecks, or what are your pain points? We start. I look at it, but then I start listening to them, and then I figure out more of a holistic approach of what their issue is, and then we go from there depending on what they need. So and the other thing I guess that's important to mention is that I have like a niche within law practice management of like legal tech, and so I've been on the AILA Innovation Technology Committee for a long time, helped organize their tech summits. I'm on the help organizing the fall conference, tech summit this fall in September in Boston. We have the innovator spotlight and everything. They're excited about that. But I'm also on the ABA Tech Show board and the co-vice chair. And so on all of that, I'm talking to all these different vendors, all these startup companies, and I'm trying to bridge that gap between the practicing attorney, which I am, and have a firm that can be used as like for beta testing, with the legal, the legal startup. And I mean, honestly, I've got like 4 companies I'm working with closely right now. It's just like how to either repurpose their existing company to add a functionality to immigration, or to help give them feedback to improve their services so they can go out to market more to the immigration bar or non-immigration as well. And so it's exciting because I'm really passionate about justice tech and helping serve my clients and reduce the cost, increase efficiency. And, when I don't know, that's what I'm really excited about. So
what are some of the trends that you're seeing now, because with legal technology, especially for the immigration space? I know at the AILA conference, there are a lot more AI based products, right? So they're drafting or they're compiling documents and whatnot. But I also saw, it was interesting. I also saw a lot of like staff augmentation companies and services pop up that have a technology element to it. So maybe, they'll have a sort of a document sharing or case management light
Uh-huh.
thing, but then what they provide really is, let's say, paralegals, right, on demand type of thing. So those are a couple of things I saw. What are some of the things you're seeing right now? This is August 2025, just for anyone who may be listening in the future. But what are you seeing right now in terms of maybe trends or things maturing that were starting to trend a couple of years ago that are finally finding their way? I mean, what are some of the things you can share there?
Well, I was just talking about this with a case management software like co-founder this earlier today. I was like, I think lawyers are in this place where they're all over the map. They're either just exploring AI or they're starting chats and starting their own businesses in that space. Like it's like this whole spectrum. So when you're out there teaching or talking about this, writing about it, you don't really know what your audience, where they are in that spectrum. So that's one thing. The other one is there's so many new tools out there. If you looked at like a virtual assistant, I'm sorry, let's see, a receptionist bot like
Mm-hmm.
answering service about 5 months ago, I think it's a whole lot better and different now today. That's one big trend I've seen. I've talked to a couple of companies who've been building those up, and they said the tech changed about four months ago. So I've seen that. Like I saw that like Hona added a virtual bot reception component to some of their services. And I think there's the standalone companies, and then there are some other add-ins to some other existing. One other big trend that's happening is that a lot of the case management companies are trying to be all in one. Like they're acquiring the credit card services and the billing component and the CRM, and they want to have the case management side and the forms, so like all in one. So like creating like their own verticals, so you don't have to duct tape or integrate a few and choose your own adventure. Sort of you go to one and you have the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another big thing that's happened last few years. I recently interviewed Aniket Sawant from Threadio on my podcast, and he said he likens a lot of the AI tools to, they can summarize, there's research and there's drafting. I also added to him, I was like, well, I see there are other things in like marketing from AI bots that can be on your social media and responding and converting those into consults, and as well as the reception and some of the other tools in the admin-ish marketing space. But let's go back to the legal area. Those are the areas, the summarization, like to be able to upload a 300 or 400 page FOIA that gives you a timeline and a summary. That saves so much time, whether you're taking on a new case. That's usually done by maybe a law clerk, an attorney, potentially maybe experienced legal assistant. Saves you time. The research, there's a lot of great new tools out there. The drafting, like you mentioned, Case Blink. There's some other ones out there with like Visa AI, Drafty AI, like some other ones out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
More that and then some people might try to use non-legal ones, but I think there's all those challenges there. So there's a lot of new programs coming out. The functionality is wild and crazy. I think it's almost overwhelming for a regular practitioner to be able to know, where should I be spending my time. That's why I
Right.
think having like experts and specialists and consultants who can help guide you through, evaluate your tech stack, tell you what's out there, give you suggestions. Like we do a lot of that with Power Strategy Group, or we know other consultants and experts that can help guide individuals. And so we're working with a lot of different leaders in that space. And then even last year alone, I went to 4 legal tech conferences. I'm pretty much going to do the same this year, including go to TLTF later in the fall. And I like to listen to Bob Ambrogi and Joe Patrice and the team on the Legal Tech Network on their weekly updates on Fridays, because I bump into them at the legal tech conferences and they give a
Mm-hmm.
good summary of what's going on. So I think if you're not using AI and leveraging technology, then you're behind already. So that's one of the big takeaways. And then there's a constant change, but most of us are not truly using the majority, or if not, like probably more than 50% of our case management. I mean, I think there's different statistics, but it's probably just dismal, like how bad of our case management and our tech stack that we're paying for that we're not using. And so being aware of what's out there. And I think one big takeaway I've noticed as immigration practitioners is that we in the past, we had pretty static, non-robust, non-integratable case management programs out there. And now the programming, the options tools that are out there there's a lot more robust, and you have to have somebody who's paying attention to the updates, the upgrades, and constantly like improving. Like you have to have a tech person in your office who's helping assist in some way, evaluating what the new functionality is and how to use it better, and constantly training your staff. It doesn't have to be a whole 100% job. I don't have that, but
Right.
there needs to be somebody's responsibility to do that. And we don't have to just open the box and use it. Like now we can customize the programs for our needs.
And I would argue, even for a solo, if you can't, a true solo, you may not have somebody on staff, quote unquote, but you should allocate, let's say, even 5% of your weekly time or monthly time or whatever to researching new tools, playing around with new tools, and or, to your point, diving deeper into your current tools to see what features you're missing and if those features may be helpful to you. And I look, I run a tech company. I mean, ours is very, very narrow in what it does. So most of the time, our users are using 80 to 90% of our features. But I do think the tech companies should do a great, should be reminding their users, like, hey, here's a feature that we have that many people don't know about. Here's a video on how to use it. So I think you're totally right on that. I want to just ask maybe a couple more questions here. So, what do you kind of touched on what's coming for Power Strategy Group, in terms of a mastermind, et cetera. So what are you looking forward to? Maybe do you have any like thoughts on when you might roll some of these things out, or what's the future for you the next, let's say, 1 to 2 years for Power Strategy Group?
Well, the courses, it's just a matter of me locking in some time. I have all the content, so I just need to record them. So the courses on School, SKOOL, those are just a matter of time, like probably the next couple weeks or something like that. I just had a very busy summer. Some unexpected things happened on top of being an immigration attorney under this administration. Yeah. So, so courses are anytime now. The school community was launched in June. And then I'd say the retreats, in-person retreats, are a 2026 event. So probably the earliest will be either January or summer 2026. So we're putting a lot of work into that. It's just I'm organizing some things for Ayla right now. So in December, I need to plug that one. The Texas chapter fall conference is about law practice management and wellness, dual track, and we're in Mexico. It's in December, like 3rd to 5th. So take a look on my LinkedIn, or it's on Ayla's calendar of events. We just have the details, a lot of really great speakers from nationwide, really good content. And so retreats for Power Strategy Group 2026, and then the masterminds 2026 as well. So they're coming soon. I just wanted to lay the foundation with the community, the podcast, and getting the book out. So I mean, the book will be out for almost a whole year. And it's exciting to see. I bumped into a law student this last week, and she's now a practicing attorney, and she said, I really love your course and everything. You gave me a lot of practical tips, and that just warmed my heart, to know that, when you get those little moments where people share that it's been valuable and helped them. And I know that I even got a message from LinkedIn recently where someone says, I listened to it. And I'm like, oh, wow, it actually are people who listen to it. I mean, I know, but you're like, you're talking to the void, and you're like, so love that. And I think you never really know the impact you're making and that ripple effect. And just those little notes of just confirmation that, just like with your program and all that you do, it just helps reinforce that you're on the right path and you're doing the right thing and giving back. And I think one of the big things is I'm doing this because I don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel. And if there's any way I can incrementally 5, 10, 20, 30% help them take better control over their lives, their time, their practice, and accomplish what they want, then I feel like I'm doing my job. And having been the child of an entrepreneur and see all the hard work they put in there, and just thinking if they would have had better resources, they would have had more time to be, more present with the family and things like you think like that, and just how interconnected it all is, and being able to take control of your time and create the life that you want.
So, as a final question, what's some advice that you're listening to now? So, a lot of people say, what advice would you give somebody or yourself 10 years ago or whatever? But what's advice that you're currently listening to or taking, to heart as you're as you are where you are today and where you're moving forward?
Well, it's funny because I live in this space, like I pretty much, to stay in a successful state, I just have to keep reviewing the content, because a lot of what I've said, I've read, I've written about, you sometimes just have these little blips of memory lapse. I One of the things I'm doing a lot is evaluating my time. I say, it's not like a product thing you do audit your time once and like, oh, I did it, yay. No, you should be doing that probably every quarter potentially, and seeing what else you could eliminate, automate, delegate. So I'm doing that now. As we have a new associate in the firm, we're shifting some duties around. We've So auditing my time. I also, the self-care and balance. I sort of failed my own test, I'll admit. I went on a beautiful, wonderful family vacation, and I was like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and happy. And then I just crashed and burned the following week, working late and working early, and just because I was like, I have to make up for it, or I don't know, whatever. And I was like, Ruby, note to self, you cannot do that. You can't have such extremes of the pendulum. But I did say to myself, I need to have a quarterly break, like a substantive quarterly break at the pace that I'm going with the work and immigration that I'm doing. And so building that into my schedule. And so I think that the time management, the delegating is so key. And then on the reading books, I'm listening to Choose FI, and I've listened to those books before, but it's been a good like summary, and thinking of ways to sort of take more control of my life and my goals and finances. And so I constantly be learning, get outside your bubble, talk to people in other industries. And I think another thing I'm listening to myself is go out and have lunch meetings or go hang out with other people. I was on one of my business women group this morning, and we hadn't met for a while, and I was like, I just love them, and I hear about what's going on in other industries, and we share ideas, and that all of that makes me a better, attorney, advisor, consultant, author, speaker, podcaster, mom, wife, all that good stuff. So keep learning.
I love it. Well, Ruby, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. It flew by. I wish you the best. I really am. I'm so happy again that you were on, because like I said, this sort of helps people who maybe do listen to the show, or even if they don't, they're very involved or interested in tech for immigration, for them to understand that if they feel overwhelmed, there are people to go to, and there are, resources. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I wish you the best, and I'm excited to hear about your in-person retreats. So for folks, they should follow you on LinkedIn, but you also have a YouTube channel, I think, right? So find you, Ruby Powers, across social media.
Yeah, the Power Strategy Group, we have a lot of content on YouTube and on Powers Law Group as well. So LinkedIn's probably a good way to get started, and then we can go from there. But thank you so much, Roman. It was a pleasure always, and very effortlessly sharing our information, and I love working with you and connecting.
Likewise. Thanks, Ruby. Appreciate it. Awesome. What an amazing episode. I hope you all learned. always learn something from these episodes. And the good reminder, if you are on vacation, do not crash and burn when you come back from it. Take that rest and actually let it, do its work. So whether that means planning for the vacation before you go, personally, I'm okay logging in for 5-10 minutes, just to manage, and not have to worry about emergencies afterwards. But everyone does it their own way. But yes, everyone, remember to take care of yourselves and rest up. And as part of that, I want to say thank you to, again, the main sponsor of this episode, DocketWise. These case management platforms, part of their job is to make your life easier, to automate certain things, or potentially eliminate certain things, as Ruby said, where, there may be some easier or faster ways of doing it. So DocketWise is an all-in-one immigration case management platform with immigration forms in a number of languages, questionnaires in a number of languages, integrations, and amazing customer service. Lots of content to help you as a practitioner learn more about the immigration industry and different aspects of it that are constantly changing. And of course, they're really just a great team at DocketWise. So check them out, www.docketwise.com, or click the link in the show notes. So with that, thank you everybody for joining, for being here. Have a wonderful weekend ahead, and see you next week on the show. Peace out.